Think about the last time you updated your resume or, your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, yeah. Always a stressful time.
Right. Seriously, just picture yourself sitting there, staring at that blinking cursor.
Mm.
You are trying to compress this massive, messy, deeply meaningful career into, like, a few robotic bullet points.
Just to please an algorithm.
Exactly. You're sitting there tweaking verbs, wondering if, I don't know, spearheaded sounds better than managed.
Hmm.
And somehow, in that whole process, the actual human being doing the work completely vanishes from the page.
It is an incredibly alienating experience. I mean, we force professionals to shrink their lived reality into these keyword-dense fragments simply because, well, we know non-human systems are going to be the first things reading those documents.
I always like to think of the traditional resume as a movie trailer.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's a highlight reel, right?
Yeah.
Its only job is to get someone to buy a ticket, walk into the theater, and see the actual movie. And the movie is you in the interview.
Right.
But somewhere along the line, we've accidentally started pretending the trailer is the actual movie. We've given the resume so much power that it's just buckling under the weight.
And that tension between the slick trailer we present and the actual messy truth of our work is really the core mission of today's deep dive. We're exploring this massive structural shift in how professionals manage their careers in an era of automated hiring.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
It really is. We are going to dissect the conflict between what experts call generated professional surfaces, like those AI-polished resumes, and an entirely new paradigm called the worker-owned evidence layer.
And to guide us through this, we're digging into Jeff Chamberlain's 2026 foundational text, What Comes After the Resume? Professional Truth in the Age of AI, along with its companion implementation guide, the Professional Truth Workbook.
Those are fantastic resources.
They really completely reframe the conversation around how we prove our value.
They establish a totally new baseline. I mean, Chamberlain points out that because artificial intelligence is now the standard engine inside human resources systems, we no longer have a signal problem in hiring.
Because generating a flawless, professional-sounding signal is practically free now, right?
Exactly. Anyone can use a language model to generate an impeccable cover letter or a pristine, buzzword-compliant resume in like 3 seconds.
The signal is just deafening now. Everyone sounds perfect on paper.
And because everyone can generate a perfect surface, trust in those surfaces is collapsing across the board. The text notes that we have actually transition into an evidence problem.
Employers just don't know what is real anymore.
Right. And workers are completely lost on how to prove their actual value without just, shouting louder into the algorithmic void.
So let's talk about what happens when you actually submit that movie trailer today. Because the reason the resume is failing us isn't just because humans are bad at writing them.
No, not at all.
It's because of the specific technological systems shredding these documents on the receiving end.
Yeah, when you hit submit on a job application, you are dropping your document into a heavily surveilled, highly automated environment. Your carefully crafted PDF is instantly consumed by systems like the Workday Skills Cloud.
And Workday doesn't read your resume like a narrative, right?
Not even close. It extracts and normalizes your experience into its own rigid ontology.
Right. It just strips away all your context and forces your whole career into its predefined drop-down menus.
Exactly. Then you have LinkedIn's Recruiter AI, which uses semantic search to categorize you based on proximity to other profiles rather than your unique achievements.
Oh.
Or your resume is fed into Greenhouse, which now generates these AI-summarized scorecards of candidates for hiring managers.
So a human manager might look at an AI summary of your resume before they ever even lay eyes on the actual document you wrote.
That's the reality.
It's terrifying to realize the surface is completely out of your control the second it leaves your hands.
It is. Which brings us to the architectural solution Chamberlain proposes, which is the living professional record.
Okay, let's dive into that.
So instead of obsessing over that heavily surveilled public surface, you build a private evidence vault. And I want to be very clear about the mechanics here, based on the citations in Chamberlain's notes.
Yeah, how does this actually work?
Well, this is not a database owned by your employer. It is a worker-owned architecture.
Meaning it lives with you on your personal devices or like your private cloud, completely independent of whatever company is currently signing your paycheck.
Exactly. And the notes explicitly ground this shift in 2 major technological standards.
Okay.
The W3C Verifiable Credentials Data Model v2.0 and the One EdTech Open Badges standard.
which sounds very technical, but
It is, but to understand how they work, just think of a digital notary seal. Historically, if you wanted to prove you had a degree or completed some massive corporate certification, you had to rely on the institution's servers to verify it.
right. And if the company goes under or the university changes its software, your proof just disappears.
Exactly. But these new W3C and 1EdTech standards use decentralized cryptography to give you the proof permanently. Once a credential or verified skill is issued to you, it just sits in your digital wallet.
So you don't need the issuing institution to prove it's real anymore.
Right. The living professional record takes that exact philosophy of portable, worker-owned proof and applies it to your everyday project work and your accomplishments.
Okay, wait, hold on. This sounds exhausting.
I know, I hear that a lot.
I mean, if you're already burned out from a 50-hour work week, or you're drained from sending out 100 job applications, you're telling me I need to go home and curate a complex database of myself? That sounds like a second job just to maintain the first job.
The fatigue is absolutely real. But let's look at how you are operating now. You are already doing this work. You are just doing it in a state of sheer panic when you desperately need it.
Oh, that is so true.
When a sudden layoff happens or a massive promotion opportunity opens up, you probably spend days frantically digging through old emails, right?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to remember what you actually accomplished 3 years ago. Trying to reconstruct your value from fading memory.
Right, so this is about doing the work when the water is calm rather than when you're actively drowning.
That's a great way to put it. The workbook outlines a practice called the minimum viable record to prevent that panic. It doesn't ask you to log every hour of your life.
Okay, that's a relief.
It simply asks that when a major project ends or, a quarter wraps up, you take 15 minutes to capture 3 things before institutional memory fades.
What are the 3 things?
What actually happened? What was your specific contribution? And what evidence exists to prove it?
Okay, let's assume I'm doing this. I'm building this private evidence vault. The immediate next question for anyone listening is going to be about liability.
Liability is a huge factor.
Right, because if I'm saving detailed project specs, financial metrics, and client outcomes, I could be holding on to highly sensitive company data. How do we keep this vault from getting us sued?
This is where we get into the mechanics of governing your own professional truth. The workbook introduces the concept of the claim map.
A claim map.
Yeah, a claim map forces you to look at your raw evidence and connect it to responsible, mature professional claims. You have to assess what Chamberlain calls claim maturity.
I really love this concept. Can you break down the maturity levels for us?
Sure. You have to categorize your skills with absolute internal honesty. Is a skill verified, meaning you have undeniable proof, a credential, or witnesses?
Right.
Or is it merely supported, meaning you have some evidence, but maybe it wasn't the core function of your job? Is it emerging, meaning you're actively learning it right now? Or is it stale, like you used to be a wizard at it, but that was 5 years ago and the software has totally changed?
Which elegantly stops you from claiming you are an expert at a programming language just because you watched like a 2-hour tutorial on YouTube last weekend.
Exactly. It builds a foundation of honesty.
Right.
But to address your very real point about legal liability, the workbook also introduces artifact safety and privacy tiers. Okay.
You cannot just dump raw, confidential company data into a personal vault.
Let me throw an analogy at this to see if I have the mechanism right. It's kind of like doing your taxes.
Okay, go on.
You don't hand the IRS a shoebox full of your raw, unorganized receipts, sensitive client names, and private bank statements, right? You hand them a rendered, highly structured tax return.
Right.
But you absolutely keep those raw receipts in your own private, secure filing cabinet at home so you can prove the numbers on that tax return if you ever get audited.
Yes. The tax return is the public surface, the shoebox is the private vault, and the rules governing what stays in that shoebox are very serious. The workbook explicitly relies on federal and corporate frameworks to define these boundaries.
Which framework specifically?
You have to filter your evidence through the USPTO trade secret policy, the NIST privacy framework, and the FTC's protecting personal information guidelines.
So let's unpack how those actually apply to someone taking notes on their average workday. Sure. Under the USPTO trade secret policy, you have to understand what proprietary methods, source code, or client lists belong exclusively to the company. Those absolutely cannot travel with you.
Makes sense.
And the NIST privacy framework dictates how you handle personally identifiable information.
So if you are a healthcare administrator or a teacher or even an HR manager dealing with employee performance reviews.
You must aggressively strip out, anonymize, or redact anything that crosses those lines before it ever enters your personal record.
So you capture the context of the challenge you faced and your specific contribution to solving it,
Right.
but you leave the proprietary names, the sensitive data, and the raw intellectual property behind.
Exactly. You keep the proof of your capability, not the company's property.
Okay, so we have our private vault built,
Mhm.
is legally protected, ethically sound, and rigorously organized by claim maturity. But having a perfectly legal vault sitting in your private cloud doesn't actually get you a job.
No, it doesn't.
We have to figure out how to bridge the gap between that private vault and the hiring manager's desk.
And this transition is what Chamberlain calls rendering. In this new paradigm, the resume is no longer a place where you sit down and try to invent an impressive version of yourself under pressure.
Right.
The resume becomes merely a selection of truth that you have already preserved. You are simply rendering the right claims for the specific audience you are targeting.
The word rendering makes me think of video editing.
Yeah.
You take all this massive, heavy, raw 4K footage and you export a clean, compressed file that someone can actually stream on their phone.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And that compressed file, the bullet point on your resume, is what the text calls dehydrated truth.
Dehydrated truth.
Yes, it's intensely compressed. You take the action, the context, and the outcome, and you squeeze it into one line. But here's the magic of the system. When you get past the automated screen and into the actual interview, your job becomes interview rehydration.
You have to add the water back in to make it a real story again.
Exactly. An interviewer points to a highly compressed bullet on your resume and asks you to explain it. Because you have your living professional record, you don't freeze up. You use the preparation from your vault to rehydrate that claim.
You add back the stakes of the project, the crushing constraints you operated under, the difficult judgment calls you had to make when things went wrong.
You restore all the human texture that the bullet point had to leave out.
And this mechanism applies to internal mobility too, right? The workbook talks about using the record for readiness claims in promotion packets.
It does.
Instead of just saying, I was really good at my junior role, please give me a senior role, you are rendering specific past evidence to prove you can handle the ambiguity, the budget, or the scope of the next level up.
It fundamentally shifts the conversation with your boss from subjective feelings about your potential to documented, undeniable readiness based on your track record.
Now, there's a scenario that a lot of listeners face that is notoriously difficult to capture on a traditional resume.
Yeah.
Career gaps and major life transitions.
Oh, definitely.
Say someone is coming back to the corporate workforce from full-time caregiving, or they are a military veteran transitioning into civilian operations. How do they render those experiences on a surface without sounding defensive, or like they are apologizing for a gap in traditional employment?
That is arguably one of the most powerful applications of the private evidence layer. The workbook advises a complete mindset shift from identity to direction.
Okay, explain that shift.
Think about a caregiver who spent 3 years managing complex medical schedules, insurance disputes, and advocating for a family member. Or a military logistics officer moving to the corporate sector.
Both are incredibly demanding roles that corporate applicant tracking systems simply do not know how to read. The algorithms just see a blank space or a bunch of irrelevant jargon.
Exactly. But the surface you present to an employer doesn't owe the public a confession of your entire life story. You don't need to apologize. You only owe the employer a truthful, evidence-backed map of where your skills are directed next. For the caregiver, their primary identity might have been stay-at-home parent, but the direction they are heading is built on the hard evidence of crisis response, complex project management, and stakeholder coordination.
You find the common denominator of the work. You don't have to explain the deeply personal reasons for a gap. You just have to prove the transferable capabilities that were actively being used during it.
Yes. You use the record to translate the evidence into the language of the receiving system without erasing the dignity of where those skills originated.
That makes total sense. But since you have to manually render these documents and translate your skills for every single application, the natural instinct is going to be outsourcing the whole headache to generative AI.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to address the ChatGPT temptation. It is so easy to dump your old resume and a job description into a prompt and say, make me sound perfect for this job. How do we use AI to render these surfaces without destroying the integrity of the evidence we just spent all this time gathering?
This is a critical failure point, which is why Chamberlain introduces the source first rule. It is a non-negotiable operating principle. AI should only be used as a translator of evidence, never as an author of identity.
Translator versus author. Let's dig into the mechanics of how those two approaches differ.
Well, if you open a language model and type, "Write a resume that makes me look like a senior tech leader," you are asking the machine to author your identity.
Right.
It will invent polished, generic corporate speak that probably doesn't match your reality. But if you provide your AI tool with a specific anonymized project record from your private vault and say, "Translate these raw notes into 3 bullet points suitable for a project manager audience, keeping the claim maturity at supported rather than expert," you are using it as a translator.
The human provides the truth. The AI just formats it.
Exactly.
Because if you let the AI author you, you fall victim to what the workbook calls AI drift.
And AI drift is insidious because it happens by degrees. There are 2 main types.
What's the first one?
The first is ownership drift. The AI might look at your note that says supported a project team and subtly change it to led the project.
Wow. Okay.
The second is identity drift. The AI might take a highly specific technical metric you achieved and rewrite it into a generic corporate buzzword like leveraged synergistic tech paradigms. Suddenly, the surface looks beautifully professional, but it no longer represents you at all.
And to combat this, the workbook suggests maintaining an AI provenance and integrity log.
Yes, you actually track how you used AI to turn your private evidence into public language. You log the source material, the exact prompt you used, and the human review process.
That feels like a lot of work just to write a resume bullet.
It is, but there are massive systemic reasons why that log is necessary. The deep dive notes rely heavily on the NIST Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework, specifically the AI RMF 1.0 and its generative AI profile.
Right.
These federal frameworks highlight the severe risks of algorithmic hallucination and unverified outputs. And to understand the stakes, we also have to look at the EEOC's April 2024 guidelines on employment discrimination and AI.
Wait, I need to pause here. How do federal employment discrimination guidelines apply to, an individual candidate tweaking their resume in their living room?
The EEOC guidelines are heavily focused on systemic risks in talent systems. When an employer uses an AI applicant tracking system, that system is trained to look for specific linguistic signals.
Okay.
Often, those signals are based on historical data that favors certain demographics, like the communication style of a typical white male executive. If every candidate uses ChatGPT to artificially inflate their language to bypass those filters, they are adopting that same homogenized voice.
Oh, wow. So we create a massive feedback loop. Candidates use AI to sound like the algorithm hires the people who sound like itself, and anyone with a diverse, genuine voice gets filtered out.
Exactly.
Machines lying to machines, reinforcing systemic bias.
The entire talent market loses its integrity. But even on an individual level, the risks are immediate.
Let me push on that individual risk for a second. If I know an AI tool is going to make my resume sound just 10% more executive, and I genuinely, in my heart, know I can do the job if I can just get my foot in the door. What is the actual harm in letting the AI inflate my identity just a little bit to get past those robotic HR filters?
The temptation is huge, I get it. But trust is the ultimate product you are selling as a professional. If the AI creates a gap between your public claim and your private evidence, you have built a trap for yourself.
How so?
Think back to the interview. The moment the hiring manager points to that AI-inflated bullet point and asks you to rehydrate that claim with a real story, your professional truth collapses.
You are going to find yourself hesitating, trying to remember the script the AI wrote for you, rather than speaking confidently from your own lived experience.
And interviewers can sense that disconnect instantly. On the flip side, the confidence that comes from knowing you have the receipts in your private vault is palpable. It completely changes the power dynamic in an interview. You aren't sitting there hoping they believe your glossy surface. You are offering them verifiable truth.
That makes total sense. Let's sort of summarize this massive paradigm shift for everyone listening.
Okay, let's do it.
First, you have to demote the resume. Stop treating it like the definitive authoritative record of your life.
Right.
Second, build that private, worker-owned evidence layer your vault of minimum viable records, protected by strict privacy boundaries and claim maturity mapping.
Yes.
Third, when you need to be visible, manually render the truth specifically for your audience. And finally, use AI as a tool to translate your evidence, but keep your human judgment as the ultimate final authority.
That's a perfect summary. And, if we pull back and look at the macro level, Chamberlain's work raises a fascinating, slightly provocative question about the future of work itself.
Ooh, what is it?
As corporations rely increasingly on AI talent systems and automated software to manage their workforces, the actual human institutional memory of a company is going to degrade.
Right, because the corporate systems only capture the sterilized data points and outcomes, not
Yeah.
the messy human context of how the work actually got done.
Exactly. Soon, the only accurate historical record of what a business actually accomplished, how its operations truly functioned, and how monumental crises were actually averted won't live on the company's servers at all.
Where will it live?
It will live distributed across the private, worker-owned evidence vaults of its employees. The workers will hold the true history of the economy.
Wow. The true history of the work belongs to the workers who kept the receipts. That is an incredibly powerful thought to leave on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It is officially time to start auditing your own professional surfaces.
It really is.
Stop worrying about making the movie trailer look perfect and start focusing on preserving the actual movie. Keep building your truth, and we'll see you next time.